Hey everyone, by now you probably heard something about the tariffs that are coming out, and I'm not here to talk about politics because that's like way outside my scope. Instead, I want to talk about something that's a bit more personal, namely how these tariffs could change what you're able to watch, whether it's in theaters or on streaming platforms like Netflix or on social sites like YouTube and TikTok. These changes, they won't just affect studios or production companies. They're going to affect all of us who love watching movies, TVs, and video content, and also how we access it. So I work in the tech industry as a technology storyteller, and I do these movie reviews and discussions because I genuinely love talking with you about film and entertainment. And while I'm not an economist, I understand how technology, supply chains, and media production work. So when I look at these new confirmed and proposed tariffs, I don't just see the policy behind them. I see how they could start cutting off or dramatically increasing costs to access content that we watch every day. Whether it's a blockbuster in a local theater or a vlog filmed overseas and then posted here on YouTube. I am going to try to get into this and I'm going to try to do it as correctly as possible while sharing the information that I do know. But hey, if I miss anything, please let me know in the comments because I really do think that this is one of those topics that we need to talk about. And there is a lot of misinformation out there, or a lot of people who just don't know or aren't thinking about how these things are going to impact them personally. So, to put all this into context, I pay for cable TV. I pay for Netflix and Apple TV. I pay for Prime on Amazon. I also pay for HBO Max and Disney Plus, and I also have the AMC A-List Pass. And yeah, I go to one or two other movies at non-AMC movie theaters every month, if not more. I feel like I'm confessing to my priest or something. I spend a lot of money on entertainment, a lot of it, and the cost, it adds up to a ridiculous amount of money. But I'm happy to pay for it because I love movies and television. I should probably also be paying for a therapist to help me with my media obsession, but I'd rather talk with you guys instead. So let's take a closer look at how these tariffs are shaping up and how they could start limiting the films and the shows and the online videos that we all access as viewers, and how that might affect our own personal bottom line for the content that we buy and pay for every month. Specifically, there are these two movie related tariff issues that I think we should talk about. The first is the potential tariff on films produced outside of the United States. Both Snarky J and The Critical Drinker have put together these great discussions on foreign film topics. And I don't want to repeat what they said. So rather than me just regurgitating that information, I recommend you just go watch their videos. They're really good, and I'll put links to their videos in the notes below. What I'd rather do here is just to add a little extra context to what maybe they didn't add in their videos, just to round out that conversation. So the Trump administration is proposing a 100% tariff on movies, television shows, and videos filmed or produced outside of the US, regardless of where the production company is headquartered. Since this tariff is still in development, there's no real clarity yet on what exactly would be taxed and how enforcement would work. It's unclear whether the tariff would apply to films partially shot abroad or content distributed digitally via streaming platforms. The administration has framed the move as a response to foreign incentives and national security concerns. But without concrete details, the policy just raises more questions than it answers at the moment. especially in an industry that is built on international collaboration and global digital distribution networks. This marks a critical shift in tariff policy. Taxes that were once confined to just physical goods could now expand to the intellectual creation of stories that stream across borders in the form of digital content, i.e., data. Depending on how it's defined, studios could face tariffs on not just film and TV, but on any video content that generates income. The thing is, movies, like music, books, and games, are products of the human imagination. They are not grown, they are not mined, they are not manufactured. While they may still be delivered via physical media in some cases, most are now simply streams of data that can pass through any number of international borders when transferred from site A to site B. This raises a deeper, more speculative question. Could this open the door to tariffing streaming data beyond films, in addition to physical goods? There's little historical precedent in the United States for placing tariffs on creative works born from the human mind and then distributed as physical or digital content. Given the international partnerships, multinational locations, and logistical complexity involved, this tariff, it could create chaos for the film industry, for theaters, and for streaming platforms that are located in the United States, including Disney, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and yes, even YouTube, which is becoming quickly known as the new Hollywood. Here's something that you may not have considered yet. Now, imagine if US viewers suddenly had to pay a tariff to watch videos from YouTube creators who have monetized their channel and are located outside of the US, like, say, The Critical Drinker, or from US creators who film some of their videos abroad, like in a travel video, like Mr. Beast does often. And what about TikTok? What about Instagram or Facebook? Could local cable providers eventually pass along their tariff-related costs to viewers if foreign made content becomes more expensive to air? And while these might sound like edge cases, this is exactly how tariffs could block or increase the cost of accessing content that's totally normal for us to consume today just because it's shot or produced outside of the United States. Foreign film tariffs are speculative. So we'll have to wait to see how that all plays out. However, there are other movie-related tariffs that we can talk about that are confirmed import taxes on physical goods required to support the film industry. These tariffs are already happening and they will increase the cost of production. They will increase the costs of every film that's made, whether or not it's made in the US or by a studio that's outside the US. These increased costs will directly impact production, distribution, and viewing costs for all of us. It's not just the film studios and movie theaters who are going to be paying more. It's the marketing companies. It's the post-production teams. It's the prop houses and the caterers. It's the transportation companies. It's the home offices and everyone who touches the cinematic supply chain in any way. And as costs rise throughout the chain, from electronics, gear, materials, they're going to hit every player's bottom line. And those increases will eventually be passed down to the end user, which means you and me, we're going to be paying those costs. So let's break this down into three key areas: increased production, rising consumer prices, and the ripple effect on theaters and global distribution. With the new global tariffs, the US now has a baseline import tariff of 10% on goods from most trading partners. There are some exceptions, but that's the baseline. For some countries like China or the EU, the rates are already higher, with a 20% tariff on European goods and as high as 145% right now on some Chinese imports. Well, on a lot of Chinese imports. Those costs hit US importers first, who then pass them on to the studios, who then pass those costs on to us. Let's start with production. For those high-end cameras and production lenses, we are looking at imports from Germany, from Japan and UK for brands like Ari, Sony, Canon, Cooke, and all of those are essential for capturing principal photography. Yes, we have red in the United States, but that alone can't fulfill every studio's needs. Think about this. As demand increases for US made goods, prices are going to rise on domestic equipment due to increased demand. That's how supply and demand works. And ultimately closing the gap on the cost of goods made within the United States and those that are imported. And so that imported gear and the domestic gear are going to start out kind of at a different level, but they're slowly going to equalize. And that's what's going to happen because honestly, corporations are freaking greedy and they're not going to leave money on the table. They just aren't going to do it. Lighting rigs often come from China and Europe. Lumber that is used for set design, it comes from Canada, Germany, and Italy. Specialty fabrics and costume textiles are sourced from anywhere from India to China and Italy. For editing and visual effects, studios rely on computers and GPUs and servers that are built with components sourced from places like China, Taiwan, South Korea, and Malaysia. The chip shortages that we have been dealing with haven't gone away, and tariffs will only make them worse. Even when studios turn to US-based suppliers, these companies now face a spike in demand that they can't immediately meet beyond what the film industry needs. That means price hikes across the board for everyone. The CHIPS Act was designed to help kind of rebuild domestic semiconductor production, but those efforts, they are still years away from meeting industry demand at scale, especially for the kinds of components used in media tech and film production work. Then there are the behind the scenes parts of production that most people don't even think about, but they are essential to the process. The big white trailers on set, they're rented, often custom fitted with imported parts that are specific to the film industry. There are also tariffs on vehicle components like brakes and axles and refrigeration systems, wiring, and more, all of which raise the cost to lease and maintain them. Or consider HVAC and power equipment. On-location shoots rely on industrial fans, air conditioners, and diesel generators, many of which use global parts. When these systems fail or need to be replaced, rental and repair costs just skyrocket. Even our local theaters, seating, lighting, and projection equipment will get hit. The fabric on those comfy reclining chairs, the LED aisle lights, the popcorn containers and cups, mostly imported. Maintenance and replacement costs for everything are about to hit our wallets, while increases for physical costs make sense. It's easy to assume that digital platforms are insulated from global tariffs, but they're not. While there's no direct import tariff on streaming platforms yet, like I mentioned earlier, there may be tariffs coming for those of us who hit play on videos if they are made outside the United States. The infrastructure behind these streaming platforms will be hit, both directly and indirectly. From the corporate office to the data centers and the on-site tech needed to run these platforms, we'll experience tax increase due to tariffs. So yes, that Netflix price hike, it's likely coming. For movie theaters, they will be hit with rising costs from every angle. Studios facing a 10 to 20% bump in production and distribution expenses will charge more to screen their films. That cost gets passed on to theaters and then to you and me. If your matinee ticket costs 12 bucks, get ready to pay 13, 14, or even more for a movie ticket. Where it really is going to hurt the theaters is in the concessions. Most theaters make their real profit from popcorn, candy, and drinks, not ticket sales. I'm already paying close to $20 or $25 for a Coke, Milk Duds, and popcorn, and add in that $14 or $18 ticket, and I'm out nearly $40 before the tariff increase. Add an extra 4 to 5 per person to that number, and then factor in a family of four. It's just unsustainable to expect people to spend 80 to $100 on a single movie experience for their family. And rising costs, they aren't limited to what we see on screen. Everything behind the scenes, from HVAC filters to cleaning supplies to mop buckets, are going to increase. These hidden expenses to watch videos and film will quietly bleed theaters dry. Theaters were already in a tough spot after the pandemic. These new pressures could be the final blow for smaller, independent theaters that are hanging on by a thread. Concession sales, they're going to drop. Ticket sales, they're going to shrink. And local theaters, especially the ones taking those creative programming risks, they will likely be the first to go. This isn't just a US problem. Other countries are already retaliating with tariffs of their own. That means American films will face higher barriers overseas, which are going to eat into the global box office revenue, which is a critical source of revenue for big budget films in order to balance out those costs. Studios may try to shift production to other countries with better trade terms. Some studios may turn to generative video in place of location shoots. Some productions might be scaled down while others are shelved entirely. Release schedules are going to slip. Projects in development for 2026 or beyond will have their budgets reviewed, and the impact of these cuts are likely to show up on screen. As a result, we're going to see fewer films, more delays, and increased reliance on digital environments. Expect more CGI. There's going to be more virtual sets and fewer practical effects. This isn't all bad, though. Those shifts might refocus the filmmaking on the story rather than on the production, as we see a rise in mid-level and big budget films. And these mid-level films are likely going to be relying more strongly on character-driven stories to sell their tickets. That could be a silver lining for viewers. So, whether it's tariffs on foreign films, physical goods, or the ripple effects on theaters and streaming platforms, what's clear is the cost of telling stories and watching videos, movies, and series is gonna go up. This isn't just an industry problem, it's a viewer problem, a creator problem, and yeah, it's an economic problem. Again, this video, it's not about politics. I decided to do this video because I care about stories and I care about how much it's going to cost us to watch them, on top of the rising costs of groceries and other daily expenses that it requires just to get through this life. I care about the indie theaters that still show 35mm film. I care about that kid uploading his very first film to YouTube. I care about the mid-budget movie makers who are just taking a creative risk to do something new and exciting for us. And I care about the craftspeople who make these stories possible, from the set designers to the editors to the projectionists. Tariffs may sound like a dry and boring policy discussion, that nobody has time for and nobody wants to hear. But they're about to reshape the entire ecosystem that supports the entertainment industry that I love and that I think you love too. We'll see fewer films, more recycled content, and higher prices for everything from streaming to movie snacks. And for those of us who care about storytelling, that matters. So, what can we do? Well, we can stay informed. We can support our local theaters and creators. And we can keep talking about what you are and what you are not willing to accept when it comes to your personal budget. Because we are all about to get hit hard since our paychecks are only going to stretch so far. I'm going to have to look out what streaming services I drop. What are you going to look at? What things are you going to drop? What are you willing to let go of because you can't afford it all? All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with me on this. If this gave you something to think about, please like this video, please share it, and please drop a comment below. I literally read every comment that you make and I try to respond to everything. And I'd love to hear how this is playing out for you in the film industry or as a viewer or as someone who just loves watching movies and videos on YouTube. That's it for now. Until next time, happy viewing. I'll see y'all later.